Buzz's Retirement Garage. Buzz here. No friends in retirement. It's a thing. Redux. About a year ago, I did a video titled exactly the same, except for the Redux part, and it had over 800,000 views. It was the best video that I did, and it was a spur of the moment video. I was cutting the back lawn, and I sat down on my tree stump near me, and I just had this idea about my first summer off in 47 years. I retired in 2023 in September. So last year, 2024, was my first summer of just being able to do what I wanted to do. But one thing I missed at the time was the acquaintances that you have when you're working. So I worked in the factory environments, 19 years or 21 years at one factory and 19 years at another. And each one of the first factory had, hundreds of people. So you were constantly around people, constantly talking to people and interacting with them. And then the second place, we had less people for the last 19 years, but it was every day you would talk to at least dozens of people, either work-related things or, private things and personal things. But you had that ability through the last 47 years of working. Going all the way back to my junior year in high school was the last time I had a full summer off. And that summer last year, I started to feel as if, there's really no friends in retirement, because what you had when you were working was acquaintances. So the video I did last year, I mentioned, and one thing I did not mention until the end, and it kind of got some people a little crazy, but I do have a spouse. And so I have a friend. I wake up every morning with a friend, and that's a great thing. And I probably didn't mention that, like I said, I mentioned it towards the end of the video, and when people got to the end, they were like, well, wait a minute, you do have a friend, you have your spouse. So, and that's true. I have the luxury of waking up to a spouse every day, where not everybody has that luxury. And I understand that. So I just want to, talk about that real quick is once you left your workplace, if you're not retired yet, you're gonna feel how this is. You're gonna see how this is. And it's not talking to those people any longer. Now you might text, and you might, visit like I did. I just did a video where I visited, but it's not the same. It's not the same as working there and seeing the people every day, and like I said, talking to them, and it's different. So when you're retired, you lose all those acquaintances, and like I said, maybe for a while you'll have some feedback back and forth, what's going on. But once you're out of the loop at work, you're totally out of the loop. You're out of the gossip stream. You're forgotten. And they don't mean it. It's just that they're busy, and the gossip goes on without you. And they're not going to be texting you and picking up the phone and telling you all the latest gossip. It may happen for a short time, but it's not going to happen for any length of time. And that's something that if you're not retired, you're going to have to be aware of. And if you are retired, are you feeling this? Do you agree with what I'm saying? So, through work, I had friends growing up. You have your neighborhood. It starts out with your neighborhood friends, right? The kids you play with on the street or on the block. And then when you go to school, in elementary school, middle school, high school, whatever it's going to be, you gain more friends and people that you run around with. College, if you went to college, you have those friends. But once you get to the workforce and you start to raise a family, everybody's busy. And yeah, you may see each other occasionally, and that's great. And you're dealing with each other, and you're going to different weddings and everything as you're growing up. And like I said, you're having families. A lot of you are having families, and then after a while, everybody's busy, and you may get together once in a while, sure. you know, you may go to church and have friends there. You may have the people that you grew up with, you know, may still be around. But as we age, we start to lose those people. Matter of fact, I had, I think, 3 or 4 people that I went to school with, younger than me, about a year, have all passed already. And so, you know, did I talk to those people every day? Certainly not. But they were there. I know they would be there if I picked up the phone and called them. They'd be there because we have a history. And they're not there any longer. So, you know, I don't have a group of friends. I just don't. You know, my first 12 or 21 years, I should say, of working, I did work local. And sure, we went out, we bowled, was in a bowling league, I was in a golf league, and you know, there was a core group of people that I hung around with out of the hundreds that were in that plant. There was a core group, and we did have some fun, and we did, you know, fantasy baseball and fantasy football, and we would go to each other's house and we would do that. So, and that was nice. But then when I got this job in Akron, I'm in Cleveland, and you know, I was there for 19 years. After the work day ended, I wanted to get home, and that was a 45 to 50-minute drive back home. I didn't want to hang out in Akron. I didn't, you know, they lived even further south. So, you know, did I hang out at their houses? No, never once. And, you know, I was always trying to get home after a long day of work. The last thing I wanted to do was go out, you know, party and try to, you know, drive home on the highways. So you can't drink, you can't do any of that. Not that I'm a drinker, but you couldn't do that. You know, occasionally we'd have some in-work parties and stuff like that. But so they were acquaintances too. And after 47 years, I lost all those acquaintances. Sure, I went back to work, and you know, like I said, a couple weeks back, did a video on that, but it's not the same. Was it Thomas Wolfe says you can't go home again, right? And it's true. No matter what situation you're in, you don't go back to the same exact situation. It's pretty much impossible. So one thing, like again, when you're gonna retire, or if you are retired, that is kind of a big thing that nobody talks about as much when you look at retirement videos. There's not a lot of talk about the separation, that you're going to have this separation from all these people, and it can be lonely, and especially for single people. I know, you know, some people work, single people work because they know what's going to happen. They're going to wake up every day with nobody there, and the acquaintances that they had, you know, they're going to miss that. And if they don't have a strong support group, family support group at home, now if you have a big family, I mean, that's real nice. But for like me and Mrs. Buzz, we don't have the luxury of a huge family anymore. You know, everybody's passed away already or moved far away, and it's you know, you don't get to see each other as often. You know, we grew up with parties. You know, every holiday we had a house filled with people. And that's no longer. That's over with. And as we age, it's going to be less and less. So anyway, it's something to keep in mind. And I know a lot of comments. There was probably 2,000 comments on that video, and a lot of people talked about having pets. And that's what gets them through every day, is their dogs or their cats or their animals that they have. And a lot of people, you know, like I said, commented that that's what really helps them. So when I did the video almost a year ago, I talked about 2 things I was going to do. One, possibly volunteer and go back to work. And I think now, a year later, I've signed up to volunteer at the dog kennel, or dog shelter, I should say. I think if they're coming to get me. Remember that song, They're Coming to Take Me Away? So I'm volunteering at the kennel shelter, and that starts next week. And I've already talked on a video that I may try to find a job in the wintertime, because wintertime in Cleveland is tough. So for 2 reasons. One, you get out and you get to talk with people and you get to do that social thing, and maybe a little extra money, a little extra spending money, so I can buy instead of a $20 fishing reel, I can buy a $50 one. Anyway, no friends in retirement, it's a thing, it's true. How do you feel? What do you think about it? Leave me a comment, and we'll discuss it in the comments. Buzz's Retirement Garage, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.